the game that we saw here at TD Arena, another overtime game. So in 2 days here in Charleston, we had a double overtime game yesterday and then an overtime game today. It was a little bit of a different game, kind of had a weird pace to it where there was a ton of points in the first, let's call it 28 minutes of the game, and then things completely grinded to a halt. It still found its way to overtime. Liberty had a chance to tie it, to send it to a double overtime. Shot didn't go. And it was an FAU win, which to me, and I'll start with this thought, we talked last night about what that loss could have done or could have meant to FAU. To lose in double overtime, such an excruciating loss. How do they respond less than 24 hours later on tired legs against a fresh team, a very energized team that comes in with a 3-0 record? Well, we got that answer tonight, and things were looking a little rough for FAU early, but they were able to answer. They always kind of, like I said, they always made that shot or got that stop that they needed, it felt like tonight. And Jeff, we'll start with you. Your impression of how FAU kind of came out of the gates tonight, but then at the end closed and made the winning plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were resilient. You know, they hung around enough, right? They took a punch early from Liberty. Liberty couldn't miss. Mm-hmm. And same thing as last night, right? They hung around long enough, but the difference in this one was they made the plays down the stretch.
Yep.
Right? I mean, obviously, you look at Leland Walker, the plays he kind of made to put him in position at the end. And then Caleb Glenn with some big baskets, making 1 or 2 from the line. And they closed out a game, and honestly, this would have been tough to take. Back-to-back overtime losses, if they had dropped this one, would have been very, very difficult to take.
And then not only that, you have to sit for a few days here in Charleston off of that loss, waiting on the Charleston Classic to start on Thursday.
Just stewing it.
Just waiting for a chance again to get another opportunity to go out there and play, and instead you get a win. It gives you a little positive momentum to sit on.
Yeah, I really do think that the start of this game was a result of Liberty having not played yesterday, waiting to get started in this event, and FAU coming off of a game where they played in front of 5,500 people, where it was one of the liveliest environments that I've seen in college basketball in a while, right? Where you play this double overtime thriller where it's back and forth and up and down and aggressive, and you're tired and your legs are gone, and you just played 44 minutes the night before, and now you come out in the dead arena and it's quiet and you're a little tired. And it took them a while to get going. And I give FAU a lot of credit for finding a way to fight through that. But what have we said this entire time? We've been here for 2 days now. What we said about FAU this entire time is if they are going to be good, if they're going to be able to have a chance to win the American, to be good enough to make a run of the tournament, because I think that the talent is there for them to be able to make a little bit of noise, they got to guard. They have to get stops. They held a good Liberty team that runs really good offense, scoreless, for 6 minutes, and without a field goal for 8 minutes in the second half. Now, they couldn't score themselves, but they did enough where they were going to be able to win this game. And
but they'll take it. The way they won this, my guess is John Jacobs would rather they win it this way, right? Fighting tooth and nail and guarding and showing some fight on that end rather than win another game at, 100 to 94 like they lost, a couple games ago.
In this one, Liberty led by as many as 12, had a halftime lead. It was 42-39 at the half. But then Liberty only scores 25 points in the second half. And I think one of you guys just said it, made a great point that FAU, they had chances when Liberty wasn't scoring for 8 minutes there in that second half. Couldn't make a field goal. And then at one point, couldn't make a shot at all. Didn't score for 6 minutes. And FAU just couldn't pull away. They couldn't pull away. The game was tied for almost that entire time because Liberty was guarding and making those same stops that they needed back the other way. And it wasn't like they were getting bad shots. There were a lot of wide open shots that just weren't falling.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of 2 different games in a way. It really was 2 different games. I mean, you saw the offense early, and then all of a sudden neither team could score. And I think part of it was much better defense, and part of it was they were just missing the shots that they were making earlier in the game. But, to me, again, if I'm FAU, I'm ecstatic if I'm John Jacobs because I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play pickleball on Monday, and I'm going to feel pretty good about the split. And especially because, again, Charleston's a really good team. We've talked about it already. We're going to see them tomorrow. Obviously, they play Liberty, 4 o'clock on field of 68. But they had a chance to beat Charleston. And they ended up beating a Liberty team that I think will be much better this year than they were a year ago because we saw it with our own eyes tonight, right? They're long. They're athletic. They got two of the best, I said it, passing forwards you are going to see in the entire country on that team.
Yeah, I mean, Liberty's a lot better than I think any of us thought coming into this game, right? I was a little surprised that they were favored coming into tonight. I think that has as much to do with the playing 2 games in 2 nights as anything. They're better than I expected them to be, and a lot of that has to do with what they have on the front court. But just one last note on FAU before we can kind of move on. You said that you think John Jacobs would be ecstatic with this. I don't know if he's necessarily ecstatic getting a split here. I think he probably feels like he has enough to have won both of these games. But I think he's also smart enough to realize that if you are FAU this year, most likely you're not getting an at-large bid, right?
He said it to us tonight. Yeah. He said the only way we're going to get an at-large bid is what? If we win the Charleston Classic.
Yes. More likely than not. And even then, like you're
probably not.
In the
even
American,
then.
there are a lot of landmines that are going to pop up in that conference. But it's not about just being able to put together the resume to get that at-large victory, right? It's like, all right, how can we build this team to the point where all of this talent is working together to be able to knock off some of these bigger – like they were close against UCF. There were issues on the defensive end of the floor. They were close against Charleston. They didn't make the plays they needed to defensively. They made the plays they needed to tonight against Liberty. We know what they can do offensively. I think for him, it's a little bit of a learning process and a growth process with this group, and I think they're going to get there, man. Like, if you look at them and stack them up player for player against some of the teams that we've seen in the bottom half of the Big East or the bottom half of the ACC, there's not that much.
Talent level isn't that different.
There's not that much of a difference.
I like his 2-point guard deal tonight. Yeah. I like the fact that he went with Walker and Moretti together. I think that's honestly, and he kind of said it like, I want 2-point guards, right?
We think about the team that he when he won the title with Baylor. Think about the roster that they put together. They won it because they had Jared Butler
and when he was at Gonzaga, at Gonzaga, they did it. He learned from Mark Few and Scott Drew, like you can never have enough quality point guards.
Well, and think exactly what we talked to him about yesterday, where 2 days ago, where we said, what were your priorities coming into this season? What were you looking for when you built this roster?
And number one.
And the number one thing he said was, I want 2-point guards. And if you think back to last night, how important was that Moretti was able to come out and basically save the game? They didn't win, but had they won, he would have been the MVP of that game because of how he ended up playing and saving the game. He maybe would have been the underrated MVP. Caleb Glenn would have eventually.
I was going to say Caleb Glenn takes a little bit of umbrage with the fact that you're saying he won an MVP.
But
he scored 27 points and polls like this guy was nothing.
That's not what I said.
You needed both those guys.
You needed them.
And I'll say this, like, to me, those two can really work together, and we saw that tonight. They're different. They complement each other. Moretti's not a breakdown guy, right? But he's smart. He uses angles. He can find guys. Leland Walker showed tonight he's more of a scorer.
That's what
he's more of a scorer.
Yeah. He can make a play if he needs to. He's out there to get a bucket.
Yep.
Though. Like that's who he is.
So you can play those guys together, especially against a team like Liberty, especially against teams that aren't going to have 6'5", guys on the perimeter.
All right. Any final